They kicked me out at 18. I returned at 30 with a secret fortune. But that night, when the door slammed behind me, I wasn't thinking about wealth. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was just trying not to drown in the ache of being thrown away by my own blood. The Harper house smelled like cheap whiskey and cold wood. The kind of smell that clung to your clothes, no matter how hard you tried to wash it out. The living room looked the same as always, dark, cramped, the walls lined with faded family photos. A heavy oak table sat in the middle, scratched and worn from years of arguments and silent dinners. James Harper, my father, stood across from me, his face red, veins bulging in his neck, hands clenched into fists at his sides. His eyes, so much like mine, burned with disappointment and rage. "You think you're too good for us? Too good for my plan for you? After everything I've done? This is how you repay me?" His voice was loud enough to rattle the cracked glass of the front window. I tried to speak, to explain that I couldn't live the life he wanted. That college, that career he'd mapped out since I was 10, it wasn't mine. But my words caught in my throat. "You're throwing your future away," he bellowed, stepping toward me. "You ungrateful little—" "James, please," my mother said, her voice soft, trembling. Linda Harper stood by the doorway, wringing her hands, eyes glistening with unshed tears. She looked so small, so tired, but he didn't hear her. He never did when his pride was wounded. And Ethan, my golden brother, the one who could do no wrong, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. "Come on, Cody," Ethan said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Don't you want to be a man? Or you gonna run away like you always do?" I clenched my fists at my sides, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The humiliation burned hotter than the tears I refused to let fall. "Get out," James growled. "You're no son of mine. You want to live your own life? Fine. Go. But don't come crawling back when you fail." The room fell silent, except for the ticking of the old clock on the mantel. My breath came in shallow bursts. I turned and walked to the door, grabbing my old backpack. The one I used for school, now filled with what little I could pack in 5 frantic minutes. My jacket, a few shirts, a photo of my mom and me from better days. "Cody," my mother's voice cracked as she stepped forward. In that moment, she looked like she wanted to stop me, to pull me back. But all she did was slip a small envelope into my hand, fingers trembling. "Please," she whispered, so only I could hear. "Be safe." I nodded, unable to speak. If I did, I'd break. Then I stepped out into the night. The air was cold, biting against my skin. A thin fog hung over the street, softening the harsh glow of the streetlights. I stood on the porch for a second, listening to the sound of the door slam behind me, the final punctuation to the end of everything I'd known. I walked down the cracked steps, across the yard that hadn't seen care in years, and onto the empty street. My breath came out in clouds. I opened the envelope, $200 folded neatly, a tiny lifeline. I felt the sting of tears again but blinked them away. This is it, I thought. No more waiting for their approval. No more trying to be what they want. I looked back once at the house, the peeling paint, the broken porch light, the window where I used to sit and dream about escaping. And I walked. Into the night. Into the unknown. But one promise echoed in my head, louder than James's fury, sharper than Ethan's mockery. "I'll prove them wrong. I swear I will." At 30, I was nothing like the boy who'd walked into the night with a worn-out backpack and $200. I sat in my office, high above downtown Austin. The late afternoon sun reflected off the glass of neighboring skyscrapers, casting long streaks of gold across my desk. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the space, offering a view of the city I now called home. Cars crawled along the freeway like ants, and somewhere below, life buzzed. Noisy, relentless. The office itself was simple. Clean lines, minimalist furniture, a framed photo of my first shop opening day. No family pictures, no reminders of where I came from. Just the present, just what I'd built. 12 years, that's what it had taken. 12 years of scraped knuckles, sleepless nights, and chasing a dream no one but me believed in. I leaned back in my chair, letting my mind drift. The first job had been at a loading dock, unloading trucks in the heat, muscles burning, blisters blooming on my palms. I lived in a motel that smelled like stale cigarettes, the carpet so stained it was hard to tell the original color. But it was mine, my space, my start. Every dollar was counted twice before I spent it. I saved for tools. A socket set here, a jack there. Little by little, I built a kit. One night, after a long shift, I helped a stranded driver fix his radiator hose in a gas station parking lot. He paid me $50, more than I made in a day at the dock. That was my light bulb moment. I found work at a small garage, watching, learning, doing the dirty jobs no one else wanted. Cleaning oil spills, scrubbing parts, staying late to figure out how things fit together. When the owner retired, he sold me the place cheap, said I had grit. From there, it grew. One shop turned into 2, then 5. I learned to manage people, negotiate contracts, spot good deals. I launched an online store for auto parts, small at first, but it took off. Now, Harper Automotive had 10 locations across the state, a warehouse full of inventory, and customers ordering parts from coast to coast. I wasn't rich enough to make the Forbes list, not yet. But I had what I needed, and no one could take it from me. A soft ping pulled me from my thoughts. I glanced at my laptop. New email. The subject line froze me. "Hey Cody. Thought you'd want to know." It was from Mark Jennings, a kid I'd gone to school with. We hadn't spoken in years. I clicked it open. "Cody. Hope you're well. This might be out of the blue, but I figured you should hear it from someone who remembers. Your dad is selling Harper's goods. The store's in bad shape. Debts, I hear. They're talking about closing for good, if they can't find a buyer. Thought you'd want to know. Mark." I stared at the screen, heart pounding in a way I hadn't felt in years. Harper's Goods, the place that had been in our family for generations. The store my grandfather built with his own hands. The store I'd been thrown out of for not being good enough. I thought I'd let it all go. I thought I didn't care. But I did. I closed the laptop, stood, and walked to the window. The city spread out before me, alive and endless. I didn't need to go back. I didn't need to get involved. That wasn't my world anymore. And yet, the idea took root, stubborn and insistent. I could buy it. I had the means now. I could walk into that shop and show them all what I'd become. Not for revenge. That's what I told myself. Not for revenge. But deep down, I wasn't sure if that was true. The road home stretched out before me like a scar across the land. I drove my black pickup along the empty highway, fields rolling past on either side, the sky endless and pale. It had been over a decade, but the route still felt familiar. Every curve, every weather-worn sign, every mile of cracked asphalt. The closer I got, the heavier the air seemed. Maybe it was just in my head. Maybe it was the weight of memories pressing down on me. The town hadn't changed much. If anything, it looked smaller. Sadder. I passed the old gas station where I used to buy soda after school. The sign was rusted now, one of the letters missing from the name. The diner was still there, but the paint was peeling, and the parking lot was empty. And then, I saw it. Harper's Goods. The store that had been in my family for generations. Once a proud fixture of Main Street, now it looked forgotten. The white paint on the wooden trim was chipped and gray. The windows were smudged and streaked, one of them cracked in the corner. The faded sign above the door swayed slightly in the breeze. I pulled over and killed the engine, sitting there for a moment, just looking. I'd imagined this moment 100 times, 1,000, but it felt nothing like I thought it would. No surge of triumph. No satisfaction. Just sadness. I stepped out of the truck, boots crunching on gravel. Took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and walked up the creaking steps to the front door. The bell jingled weakly as I entered. Inside, it smelled of dust and old wood. The shelves were half empty, the displays faded. The place felt hollow, like the spirit of it had long since left. I spotted them at the counter. James Harper. My father. His hair had thinned, his shoulders stooped just slightly. But his face, that hard, set expression, was exactly as I remembered. Linda Harper. My mother. Lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She looked tired, worn down. And Ethan. My brother. The golden boy. His suit was rumpled, his hair messier than he probably intended. He was talking fast, gesturing at a pile of papers. His voice carried, tight with frustration. We can't keep delaying this, Dad. The creditors are breathing down our necks. We need a solution. James slammed a hand on the counter. And you think I don't know that? Don't tell me what we need, Ethan. They hadn't seen me yet. I cleared my throat. All three of them turned at once. And for a second, just a second, they didn't recognize me. I saw it in their eyes. The man standing before them wasn't the scrawny, scared boy who'd left all those years ago. I was taller now, broader. My hair was shorter, my jaw lined with stubble. The clothes I wore weren't expensive, but they fit well. Confidence, not fear, shaped my posture. James was the first to speak. His eyes narrowed. Can we help you? I almost smiled at that. Almost. It's been a long time, I said. Recognition flickered in my mother's face first. Cody? She whispered, as if she didn't trust herself to believe it. Ethan stared, mouth slightly open. James's jaw tightened. Well, look who decided to come home. The warmth in his voice was as thin as the dust on the shelves. I stepped closer, glancing around. Place looks different. Time hasn't been kind, Ethan muttered, dragging a hand through his hair. James shot him a look, but said nothing. Linda's hands trembled on the counter. We didn't know. We didn't expect. I heard about the store, I said quietly. Figured I'd stop by. James barked a bitter laugh. What, to gloat? To see what failure looks like up close? I kept my voice even. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. I let them talk. I let them explain. Or try to. The debts, the bad deals, the decline of the town, how the big box stores and online giants had bled Harper's goods dry. I listened, arms folded, leaning against a dusty display. And I said nothing about who I was now, about what I'd built, about the fortune that waited quietly behind the scenes. Not yet. We sat in what they still called the office, though it felt more like a tomb. The small room smelled of old paper and stale coffee. The wooden floor was scuffed and worn down to the raw boards in places. A battered metal filing cabinet leaned against one wall, its drawers slightly ajar. On the other wall, faded certificates hung crookedly, yellowed with age. I remembered when my father had proudly displayed them. Awards for service to the community, plaques for business excellence. They looked hollow now, like the pride that once filled this place had leaked out over the years. A single bare bulb buzzed overhead, casting hard shadows across the desk piled high with invoices, overdue notices, and desperate letters from creditors. James sat on one side, arms crossed, jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on the desk, fingers steepled as if trying to pray his way out of the mess. My mother hovered near the doorway, as if torn between staying and fleeing. I took a breath and let it out slow. I'll buy it, I said simply. James's head snapped up. His eyes blazed. What? The store, I said. The business. I'll buy it. Full price. Cash. Silence crashed into the room. Ethan stared at me like he couldn't quite believe what he'd heard. His face flickered between relief and disbelief. Linda's eyes widened, shining with something I couldn't name. Hope? Fear? Both? And James looked like I'd slapped him. You come back after all these years, he growled, and you think you can just waltz in here and take what's ours? You want to kick us while we're down, is that it? You want to see me beg? I kept my voice calm. I'm not asking you to beg. I'm offering a solution. A solution? His laugh was harsh, bitter. This is your revenge. Admit it. No, I said, leaning forward just slightly. If I wanted revenge, I'd let this place rot. I'd let the bank take it. I'm offering to save it. He slammed a fist on the desk, rattling the papers. You're no savior. Dad, stop, Ethan said, voice tight. We don't have options. You know we don't. We're out of time, out of credit, out of everything. James glared at him. So we're just supposed to hand it over to him, after everything? I looked at Ethan. He wouldn't meet my gaze. He just stared at the mountain of debt between us, defeated. Linda stepped forward, wringing her hands. What would that mean, Cody? If we sold? I met her eyes. Softer, gentler. It means I take over. Full control. You step away. I'll pay what it's worth, and I'll fix it. James's face darkened further. You'd throw us out of our own legacy. I shook my head. No. You already did that yourselves. I'm just trying to keep the name alive. The words hung heavy in the stale air. Ethan closed his eyes for a long moment, then opened them and nodded slowly. We should take the deal, he said quietly. James looked at him as if betrayed anew, but he said nothing. His pride was a thick wall, but even he couldn't argue with the numbers on those papers. And my mother? Her eyes met mine, pleading silently for kindness, for some part of me to remember love beneath the scars. I'm not doing this to hurt them, I thought. I'm doing what I have to do, what they forced me to learn to do. I'll have the paperwork drawn up, I said. No one argued. The first thing I did was change the sign. The old one had been hanging above the shop for 40 years, weather-worn, cracked and half-faded. I had it taken down and replaced with something bold, clean, modern. Harper's Goods and Garage, in sleek black letters, on a brushed steel panel. A new name for a new start. The renovations moved fast. Fresh paint covered the flaking beige walls in deep navy blue. I ordered new lighting, shelving, displays. The front windows were scrubbed until they gleamed, and I swapped out the rusty open-closed sign for a digital one. Inside, the smell of fresh paint mixed with sawdust and old memories. I spent mornings reviewing invoices, afternoons on Zoom calls with suppliers, and evenings designing the new website. I hired 2 new employees, installed a modern POS system. Every corner of the place was being rewired, rebuilt. Not just the building, but its spirit. And then Emma walked through the door. It was a Tuesday morning. I was crouched behind the front counter, trying to fix a loose outlet, when I heard the bell jingle. Still fixing things yourself, huh? A familiar voice said. I looked up, and nearly dropped the screwdriver. Emma Rios. She hadn't changed much. Same warm brown eyes, same half-smile that always made people want to lean in. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose braid over one shoulder, and she wore jeans and a paint-splattered hoodie. Emma, I said, blinking like she was a ghost. Wow. She laughed. I heard you bought the place. Thought I'd stop by, see if you needed help. I stood, wiping my hands on a rag. Yeah, actually. I could use someone who knows the old system. She stepped forward and glanced around the space. You've changed a lot. But it still smells like Harper's. Old wood and grease? And history, she said, meeting my eyes. Some of it good. Emma had worked here in high school, back when we were just 2 kids who shared study sessions and daydreams in the storage room. I remembered sneaking sodas with her during slow afternoons, the way she'd roll her eyes when my dad barked at everyone like a drill sergeant. We were never quite a thing, but the almost had always lingered. Now she was back. Older, sharper, but still with that same quiet steadiness. She jumped into the chaos like she never left. In a week, she'd helped reorganize the inventory, digitize the backroom records, and smooth over the growing pains of the relaunch. One evening, after closing, we sat together on a bench in the town park. The sun was low, painting the sky in shades of peach and lavender, the same bench we used to sneak away to after school. So, she said, stretching her legs out, why'd you really come back? I stared out at the pond. To buy the store, I guess. Bull, she said lightly. You could have bought a dozen stores in Austin. You came back for something else. I smiled. Maybe I just missed the smell of motor oil and small-town gossip. She nudged me with her shoulder. You missed something. But not that. I didn't answer right away. I didn't know how. A few days later, James showed up. He hadn't stepped foot in the shop since I took over, but there he was, standing at the entrance, arms crossed, eyes scanning every change like he was looking for something to criticize. Well, he said, voice dry. "You've certainly made it look pretty." "Thanks," I said, not bothering to stop adjusting the display behind the counter. He walked slowly through the aisles, trailing fingers along the new shelves like he was measuring them against his memory. "It doesn't feel like Harper's anymore." "It's not supposed to," I replied. He turned to face me, jaw tight. "You always thought you were better than this place." I met his gaze evenly. "No. I just thought it could be better." He stared at me for a long beat, then shook his head and left. I didn't stop him. I didn't need his approval anymore. The breakthrough came the next morning. I got a call from a national parts distributor. I'd pitched them 2 weeks earlier, offering to be a regional supplier for the area, something no one else here had even attempted. They agreed. The contract was signed by noon. It meant guaranteed bulk shipments, better prices, new traffic. It meant Harper's Goods wasn't just going to survive. It was going to grow. Emma and I celebrated with takeout and music echoing through the newly polished aisles. I looked around, at the clean windows, the humming lights, the new boxes arriving on fresh pallets, and for the first time in years, I felt something settle in my chest. Maybe I didn't come back for revenge, I thought. Maybe I came back to remember who I really was. The transformation of Harper's Goods wasn't just a facelift, it was a resurrection. Word spread fast in the town. People who hadn't set foot in the store in years came back, curious at first, then impressed. The new layout, the better prices, the partnerships I'd secured, it all worked. The store was busy again. The parking lot, once empty, now had trucks and cars parked from open to close. The orders came in steady, both in person and online. Our supplier contracts gave us an edge no one else had in the county. For the first time in decades, Harper's Goods was profitable. Really profitable. And James noticed. I caught him once, standing across the street. I was adjusting a display in the window, and when I looked up he was just watching. Arms folded, brow furrowed, as if trying to make sense of it all. There was something in his face I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not disdain, shame. A week later, my mother called. "Cody, would you come to dinner?" she asked, voice soft. "Just us. The family." I hesitated. "It would mean a lot," she added. "Please." So I said yes. We met at a small restaurant near the edge of town. The kind with checkered tablecloths and mismatched chairs. The kind that hadn't changed in 30 years. Linda smiled when I walked in, genuinely glad to see me. Ethan was already there, fidgeting with the salt shaker. James arrived last, looking like he wasn't sure why he'd agreed to come. We made small talk over meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Linda asked about the store. Ethan tried to act interested. James stayed mostly quiet, his fork scraping against his plate. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't a fight either. And for now, that was enough. A few days after that, Ethan showed up at my office. The place had become my second home, clean, bright, with framed photos on the walls of the new Harper's Goods, the staff, even Emma and me standing in front of the fresh sign, both of us grinning like kids. Ethan didn't sit. He paced. "I need a favor," he finally said. I leaned back. "What kind of favor?" His eyes darted everywhere but at me. "I'm in a bit of trouble, some debts. It's not a big deal, just a temporary thing. I was hoping you could help me cover it. Just a loan." I stared at him, silent. "How much?" He swallowed. 50 grand. I let that hang in the air. "Gambling?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer, but I saw it in his face. I shook my head. "No, Ethan." His jaw dropped. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no. I won't enable that. It's just a loan. I'll pay you back." "With what? Another bet?" His hands curled into fists. "You think you're better than me now?" "No," I said calmly. "But I know where that road leads. I was on it once, remember?" He froze, hating the world, blaming everyone else, waiting for some miracle to save me. "It doesn't work. It never works. Stop before it swallows you." He stared at me, furious. But beneath that I saw it. The fear. The shame. He left without another word. That night, Emma stopped by the office. She brought takeout, like she somehow knew I needed the company. We sat together, eating off paper plates, the city lights glowing outside the window. "I'm glad you came back," she said softly. "Me too," I admitted. There was a warmth between us, easy and natural. No pressure, no need for big declarations, just two people who had found their way back to something good. And for the first time in a long, long while, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I belonged here after all. Harper's Goods didn't just survive, it thrived. The store that once felt like a relic of a forgotten time now pulsed with new life. Customers filled the aisles, chatting, laughing, calling greetings to me and the staff. The shelves were fully stocked, the displays polished and sharp. We had new product lines, special orders, even a small garage service area in the back that was always busy. The parking lot that had once been empty now seemed too small. Cars came and went all day long. People from neighboring towns stopped by because they'd heard about the comeback of Harper's Goods. And I was proud. Proud of what I'd built. Proud of what we'd saved. But more than that, I was at peace. I could have left. When the work was done, when the contracts were signed, and the store stood on solid ground, I could have packed up and gone back to Austin, back to the comfort of what I'd known. But I didn't. Because somewhere along the way, this place stopped being a reminder of the past I'd tried to outrun. It became home. Emma and I talked late into the nights, sitting on the porch of her small house, planning what was next. She had ideas for expanding the online side of the business. I had thoughts about opening another location nearby. And between the plans and the laughter and the quiet moments, something steady grew between us. Something real. I wasn't in a hurry, neither was she. But we both knew where it was headed. It was James who surprised me most. He came by one evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the storefront in gold. He stood outside, hands in his pockets, watching the customers leave with their bags, their smiles. I stepped out to meet him. For a long moment, we just stood there. Finally, he spoke. "I was wrong about you," he said quietly. The words hung in the air, heavier than any insult he'd ever thrown my way. "I know," I said. He nodded once, looking out at the lot, at the building, at everything that was still ours, in name if not in control. "You did good," he added. And then he left. No more words needed. That night, I climbed to the small terrace above the store. It wasn't much, just a flat roof with a railing I'd added, a couple of chairs, and a view of Main Street. The town spread out before me, bathed in the warm glow of streetlights and sunset. I could hear the low hum of engines, the chatter of neighbors, the music spilling from the diner jukebox down the block. I leaned against the rail and breathed it in, all of it. The good, the bad, the memories, the future. Sometimes you have to lose everything, I thought, to finally find yourself. And I had,